Welcome back to the Broad Street Sports Podcast featuring Zachary Chaby, and today I'll be giving you my Week 11 predictions from Thursday Night Football to Monday Night Football, and I'll be giving you my thoughts on college football, how the playoffs are shaping up, and what I expect to happen in this new format. So, talking about the first game we got this week, possibly the game of the week, Commanders and Eagles. Very excited going to this game. That's why I'm recording today. So, very excited to see this game. Should be a good game in my opinion. Hopefully it lives up to the standards just as much as it's been talked about, especially the way last week's games played. I hope it's just exciting as that. Looking at this game, though, both teams are playing well. One's coming off a loss, one's coming off a win. But just looking in deep dive into this game, both teams are ready to play. They both look ready to win, especially. And overall in this game, Jaden Daniels, I expect to have a good game. Hurts, I expect to have a good game. A.J. Brown, very much involved. Saquon, more involved in the offense this week. And then Terry McLaurin, very much as well. But overall in this game, I think the Eagles will win by the score of 37-31. I think they'll barely get out of there with a win, but they'll have played their best football on offense and have some good defensive plays overall, but get out of there with a win. So, moving on to the Sunday slate of games, the Raiders and the Dolphins. I have the Dolphins winning this game. Not really going to talk about it that much. I think both teams are not that great, but the Dolphins have looked better as of late, especially getting a nice win against the Rams. And the Raiders, they're just a dumpster fire at this point. So, moving on to the next game, we got the Browns and the Saints. Looking at this game, both of these teams, one's coming off a bye and one's coming off a nice win, especially with the Saints against Atlanta. That's a huge win for them. But overall in this game, Saints back in the Superdome again this week. I think that's what it's going to play the difference. I think they'll be able to force a couple of turnovers on Jameis Winston, which will be the turning point of this game in my opinion. So that will be great to see. Overall, just it's gonna be interesting to see how this game's played, but overall I think the Saints will win this game based off I think they'll be able to get more turnovers and just produce more points on offense, and the Browns will be able to. So moving on to the next game, the Colts and the Jets. Not going to talk about this game much either. I think the Jets will win this game. Both these teams have not been playing good football, and it's translated to their records, but I think the Jets, they will try to play their best game, and I think they'll be able to get a couple turnovers on Joe Flacco because he's been not great the past couple weeks, has a couple turnovers, and I think the Jets will just ultimately be able to win this game, not by much, but good for them, I guess, like a good manner for them. Moving on to the next game, the Vikings and the Titans. This game, I think, could be interesting, but I think what's going to come down to it is the Vikings defense is going to be able to make more stops, get more turnovers on Will Levis, who did have a good week last week against the Chargers, but I think it's going to be tough to play against one of the best defenses played this year, for sure. They've been great behind Brian Flores' play calling. But overall, I think the Vikings will be able to get good defense and put enough points up more than they did last week to win this game. So, moving on to the next game, the Packers and Bears, a nice NFC North rivalry, trying to be renewed. But at the same time, though, the Bears, they still suck right now. I mean, they're 4-5. They haven't looked great, and they just can't get any offense going. They haven't scored a touchdown since the Commanders game, which is very concerning. Caleb Williams just looks out of sorts, and they just have no direction on where they want to go right now. They just fired their offensive coordinator, Shade Waldron. So it should be interesting to see how the offense could be maybe possibly changed up in any way. But for the Packers coming off a bye, I think their defense will step up and make some plays, and their offense will be firing on all cylinders. So moving on to the next game, the Jaguars and the Lions. I think this could be a big blowout, like the Titans when they played the Lions a couple weeks beforehand. I think the Lions, they know they didn't play their best football last week, but were still able to get the win. I think they'll be able to go into Detroit, assert their dominance early, and get a couple turnovers on Mac Jones, who did not play great last week, and ultimately assert their dominance, like I said, and win this game in convincing fashion. So, moving on to the next game, the Rams and the Patriots. This game is very interesting to me. Drake May has been playing great the past couple weeks, and the Rams are coming off a tough loss last week where they were only able to get into the end zone against the Dolphins. But looking at this game as a whole, I think the Patriots will keep it close, in this game with the Rams. But I think the Rams, coming off a week where they didn't produce much offense, only field goals, I think they'll be trying to wake up a little bit more, and I think they'll be able to get some touchdowns on the board and win by maybe 7-10 points. So, Moving on to the next game. This game is definitely also interesting. A great AFC North matchup as the Steelers play their first game in division against one of their greatest rivals in the Baltimore Ravens in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh had a great win against Washington last week. Russell Wilson looked great except for the one interception. For the Ravens, they had a nice comeback win against Cincinnati. So it's going to be interesting to see how this game is played overall, but I think it's going to be good competition from both teams, and ultimately I think that the Steelers will be able to get the win in this game. I think it's going to be very close, but I think the Steelers will be able to force a turnover on Lamar. That is ultimately the deciding factor in this game, and I think the Steelers will just get out of Pittsburgh with a close, maybe 4 or 5 point win. Moving on to the 4 o'clock slate games, the Seahawks and the 49ers. I think this game stays close if DK Metcalf plays. If he doesn't play, I don't think it's close. Either way, in either scenario, I still have the Niners winning. They have Christian McCaffrey back. They looked a little bit better last week, and I think McCaffrey will be more involved in this offense than he was last week, even though he still had a good game. But overall, I think the Niners, they know that they're trying to still compete for a championship, at least the playoffs. I think they'll be able to they'll be able to be back home, McCaffrey's first home game, and I think they'll be able to assert their dominance early. They get a couple of defensive stops on Geno Smith, they should be just fine. If they can contain Jackson Smith and Jigba, they should be just fine. But overall for the Niners, get back to the fundamentals of their offense and get some stops on defense, and they'll win this game pretty convincingly. Moving on to the next game, we got the Falcons traveling to Denver for a very interesting matchup, in my opinion. Denver is coming off a tough loss. The Chiefs blocked their field goal to remain unbeaten, and the Falcons got upset by the Saints in the Superdome last week. Marquez Valdes-Scantling had a huge game against them. So it should be interesting to see how they play Courtland Sutton. They're going to have to play better defense this week, too, because Bo Nix has been looking great for what he has. And the Broncos, they're 5-5, but they've been playing a whole lot better than 5-5. It's just they've had some tough losses, but that grows as a rookie quarterback gets later into the season, and I think Bo Nix has a very bright future, in my opinion. If he keeps making the plays he needs to, he should be just fine. And although I think the Falcons will have a rebound game this week, though, I think will be able to force a couple of turnovers on Bo Nix because their defense, it's been all right this year, and I think this is the one game where it projects a little bit better. And for their offense, this Broncos defense is tough, but I think Kirk Cousins will realize that they need to get back in a winning mentality, and I think traveling to Denver will be just what they need. So, moving on to the 4:25 game of the week, we got a very good matchup between the 8-2 Buffalo Bills and still the unbeaten Kansas City Chiefs. Looking at this game, I think it's very tough, in my opinion, between the two. Chiefs, their offense hasn't been great the past couple of weeks, but their defense has been really good to keep them in this games and ultimately win it for them, and especially their special teams last week, getting that huge block field goal to keep them unbeaten. So, but looking at this game, it's in Buffalo. You can't say much about it anymore. Mahomes can go and win anywhere at this point. It's not that hard for him to do. But looking at it in reality, the Chiefs, I think, even though this might be their one threat to keep them unbeaten, to give them their first loss, I think this, even though like I just said, I still think they will win this game because it's shown that Mahomes can go and win on the road, and honestly, in my opinion, he's looked better on the road than he has at home, so I think that will be the deciding factor. In my opinion, I think the Chiefs defense will be able to force some turnovers on Josh Allen. They already ruled out Keon Coleman. Amari Cooper's in question, and I feel like him not having his top two receivers will make an impact more than it did last week. So, moving on to Sunday Night Football, we got a very good matchup between the 6-3 Los Angeles Chargers and the 4-6 Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals, this is a must-win for them at this point. If they don't win this, they can pretty much, I think, call their season over. Just having 7 losses in the AFC is tough to get back with, especially this late into the season. They would have to pretty much win out. But ultimately, I do think they will win this game because I think their offense will be able to put up great numbers, and I think if their defense can just play a little bit better than they did last week down the stretch, I think they should be just fine. The Chargers have been great. They've been great this season. Herbert's been looking good. They've got good running game with J.K. Dobbins, and Gus Edwards looked good last week. They got a great rookie in Lam McConkey. Quentin Johnston's looking more involved in this offense, but I do think the Cincinnati Bengals offense will be too much for the Chargers to go back and forth with, and that's what's going to win the Bengals this game. So, moving on to Monday Night Football, we got a Texas clash between the Houston Texans and the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys, I just think their season's over at this point. It's been over for a while now. They just have their locker room is being torn apart as we speak, and just nothing much for them to gain traction on. So, and for the Texans, a tough loss last week. They had the Detroit Lions right where they wanted them at halftime, but CJ Stroud had some costly turnovers in the second half, and the Lions were able to storm back and win a crazy game in the second half. But I do think the Texans will get a rebound game this week. They have Nico Collins back. I think he should be playing this week. He almost played this week against the Lions, but didn't end up playing. But I think Nico Collins will make his impact this week, having some good catches, having good catches and yards and maybe a touchdown. And Joe Mixon, I think, will be able to run over this Cowboys defense up and down the field. And the Texans, I think, will force a couple turnovers on whoever's starting quarterback between Cooper Rush and Trey Lance. So moving on to the second part of the show, I'm going to talk about the college football playoffs, how it's currently seeded up, and what I expect to happen. As of right now, it just got revealed last night, the college football rankings, and if the season ended today, these would be the matchups. The 7-10 game, we got Tennessee and Notre Dame. The 6-11 matchup, we got Penn State and Ole Miss. The 2-3 are BYU and Texas. On the other side, we got Indiana and Alabama. Then we got Ohio State and Boise State. And then we got Oregon and Miami with the byes. Looking at this as a whole, I just think it's interesting to say the least. Everyone here has been playing well. Alabama had a nice win last week against LSU. Jalen Milroe looked phenomenal. So, just overall, it should be interesting to see just what happens ultimately. But as it's currently slated, I think not much will change in this. Maybe you'll get a Colorado in there who might win the Pac-12 championship. But really, other than that, I'm excited for the college football playoffs. I like the new idea of them giving it a new format. I think it will help the game a whole lot more. It'll get more people intrigued, especially, and get more fandom into the game, because these teams that usually just miss out, they stop watching after their team doesn't make it. And I feel like getting this into a new NFL format especially will get more viewers back into the game and just make the games more interesting. But ultimately, I'm excited for the college football playoffs. In a couple of weeks, when we know what the final matchups will be, I will give my predictions. But just great college football season so far. All these teams, like I said, deserve where they deserve where they need to be, or they deserve this opportunity they've been given, and they've been taking opportunities of it. All these teams deserve to be here. That's what I wanted to say. But ultimately, just like I said, excited for that. So it should be interesting to see. But other than that, that's going to wrap up today's episode. Thank you, everyone, for watching when you get to watch this. But really, other than that, that's going to wrap up today's show. Have a good rest of your day, and just enjoy the night. See you guys.